And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very important segment today on the 29th day of April 2022. And hey, it's a very good day out there today, mostly sunny, 24 degrees today, up 1 degree from yesterday, and you can feel it, it's warmer right now. So it's wonderful once again to have your company. And today the first thing we will be talking about is the Q&A that happened yesterday, and we were there to witness it yesterday. You'll probably see us in the audience in this next segment, and it was wonderful to see all different perspectives, especially leading into an election, and I thought the presentation was very good. Stan Grant did, as usual, a wonderful job of moderating the session, even though at many times panelists were interjecting or sometimes butting in and talking when it wasn't even their turn. So let's see how the politicians answered to this 20-year-old, and I thought her question was just very, very amazing. The question about the challenges that the youth are facing today. What has Australia become? What are the youth's aspirations? Where are they going? What are they heading? What can they look forward to in this nation? So here is yesterday's Q&A where I was present.
All right. I'm 20 years old. I work a minimum wage job and I study full-time. I live in a constant state that I won't be able to afford fuel in my car or be able to put groceries or ever get a house. Not only this, but there's talk of war, there's talk of running out of fuel, and there's also still living through COVID. Is there any point that I keep studying, that I keep trying, that I keep wanting these aspirations, or shall I just get comfortable in bed? So Australia used to be a place that I was very happy to say I was a part of, and I saw many ambitions here. Should I just get comfortable in this paycheck to paycheck sort of lifestyle, or should I keep going? Thank you.
Keep going, Jade. Keep going. I'm sorry to hear that things look so bleak, but it is understandable. Annika, what do you offer to someone like Jade when you hear that?
It is so bloody hard to be a young person in Australia at the moment. Rent in Brisbane averages about $500 a week now. You probably know that. If you need to get to Headspace, it's 4 months wait. At Nunda, 4 out of 10 young people have never had a permanent full-time job because those jobs keep getting casualised. And I got elected in 2019. It's my first term. What staggers me is that 2019 was the first year that there were more Australians born after 1980 than before, and it was the first year that our workforce had more millennials and Zoomers in it than all of the other generations combined. But we are only 10% of the national parliament. I'm the youngest woman in the House of Reps this term, and I am 36, married, I have 3 kids and a rescue kelpie. I'm at an age now where I'm starting to get really excited by orthopaedic footwear. The state of young people and their representation in our parliament is dire. So please do not get comfortable, get elected, or find one of your peers who you think would be great to represent you and your voice and your people in Parliament, and get them to Canberra as soon as possible.
Yeah, Stuart, Robert, of course, what happens here now, though, is that we're hearing from Jade about just daily getting by, and we're now likely during this election campaign to see an interest rate rise, inflation going up around the world and going up here. Sadly, things are not going to get much better, are they?
Well, thanks, Jade, first of all, for your honesty. It can be difficult coming forward and saying it's hard, and it is. And every generation has its certain struggles, and we've seen coming out of COVID some of the challenges in mental health, especially as the acting education minister, and visiting a school this morning in Petrie, just talking to students and parents about programs they're running to help young Australians really adapt and try and overcome some of the great challenges they've had. So it's a very honest response. It's a very common response from young people in that respect as well. I've got 3 sons, and I know Annika's got a young family. I've got a 16-year-old, 14-year-old, 12-year-old who constantly tell me they're stressed as well. But at the same time, to join Annika, Australia remains a land of enormous opportunity. Yes, there are some great uncertainties, and I think they're going to continue for a long time forward, as there have been uncertainties in the past. But with that comes enormous opportunity. With unemployment at 4% and getting lower, the opportunity for a job is always there, with opportunities in terms of education, for study and for travel. In pre-pandemic, over 11 million Australians travelled. So the opportunities are there. It's just about really embracing them, studying hard, looking for them, and seeking support and help if it's needed.
I'm not going to speak for Jade, but I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, Jade, when you said that I can't afford my rent, fuel, groceries, there's talk of war, running out of fuel, COVID, prices going up. We've asked both of you and you've told her exactly all the things that Jade knows and a pep talk about how to hang in there, but what are you actually going to do, Annika? What is the answer to what Jade is saying here? She's saying she can't afford fuel and rent and groceries. She doesn't need a pep talk.
No, and I wasn't giving you a pep talk. I was urging you to run for Parliament. I hope you do it. But I accept your point. You're talking about cost of living and a sense that people aren't looking after you, people aren't addressing these concerns that bother you day to day. And I want to say, I get it. Like, I've got 3 kids, we pay childcare fees for 3 of them, the cost of everything is going up and wages aren't. What is Labor going to do? We're going to fix wages. We have to lift wages and we have to give people good, secure jobs, because if you can take away the worry about living day to day, what your hours look like week to week, what your paycheck's going to do, and whether you're going to stay in that job beyond the contract that you might be in, then you can start to worry about getting your life together and doing things that you want to do, planning ahead.
Stuart Robert, again, the question to you was that on your watch, your government's watch, inflation's going up, and we're on the verge of having an interest rate rise. And of course we've heard, Jade said here, about the price of rent in Brisbane going up as well. So beyond platitudes, what are you actually going to do? What can you offer someone like that?
And I'm happy to go through what government does. I wanted to show some empathy first because I do understand the significant challenges. It's why tax cuts are so central, to ensure that you get more money and keep more of it. It's why, in terms of coming forward to 1 July 2024, we bring forward the next round of tax cuts that knocks out the entire tax bracket. It's why the automatic stabilisers are there in terms of rent assistance for you, in terms of off-study there, as well as a range of other payments depending upon your family circumstances. I don't know if you have a partner or children. It's why the budget includes cost of living adjustment packages, especially in terms of the low income and middle income tax offsets. So these cost of living adjustments, these supports in terms of what's called the automatic stabilisers, either through off-study, through youth allowance, depending upon whether you're studying full-time or otherwise, the tax cut structures we're putting in place are all designed to provide as much assistance to you as possible. It's also why we're doubling down in terms of skilling. There has never been as much support going into skilling now, because we know if we can raise the skills of Australians, it leads to higher paying jobs. And I'd certainly encourage you to embrace that skilling agenda.
Larissa Waters.
Yeah, look, this is from a government that made university more expensive when in fact it used to be free and should be free again. So thank you, Jade, for encapsulating what so many other people feel right now. It's getting really hard to get by, and you're not alone in that regard. Everything's going up except your wages. But you know what else went up? The wealth of billionaires during COVID. Mining billionaires in particular doubled their wealth. So we've actually got a growing gap between the very wealthy and ordinary people. And this government isn't doing anything to fix that. What they could and should be doing is making TAFE and uni free. They should be putting dental and mental health care into Medicare, because no one can afford to go to the dentist and no one can afford to pay for the mental health treatment that they need. And here's a suggestion. You mentioned Austudy. It's too low. And so are all of the other social support payments. They are below the poverty line, and they should be at least $88 a day. Can I just finish, Stan, on that point? We can have all of these things. We can have a government that works for you and not just big corporates and political donors if we make the billionaires and the big corporations pay their fair share of tax. We can raise the revenue and then fund the services that people need to address that cost of living.
All of that sounds good, Larissa Waters. It'll get applause, but debt's going up. We've had to reach into government revenue to get us through the other side of COVID. Inflation is global. Interest rates are going up around the world. what you're suggesting here is more spending, finding the money for more spending
I've got a suggestion
when
for
debt
you,
is already
Stan.
going higher.
Well, how about we get rid of the $184 billion of stage 3 tax cuts that will go to the incredibly wealthy that do not need the help? Redeploy that money into those things that I just mentioned.
Campbell Newman, I was struck by something that you said, and it led to your disaffection with Liberal Party, and that is that you look at Australia and you don't recognise the country anymore. What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't recognise Australia, and I guess I'm agreeing with the concerns you're expressing, because this country has lost its mojo. And I grew up as a teenager in a country that believed in national development. It was the generation of World War II who built this country, who built the highway system, alumina refineries, coal-fired power stations, dams and irrigation schemes, and there was opportunity. But I think we've forgotten where our bread's buttered, how we earn our place in the world. And I'm sorry, Senator, I don't think the prescription to deal with the issue here is more tax. I don't think it's more spending. It's actually about cutting taxes. It's about creating an environment where people can take control of their money. For example, voluntary superannuation, being able to opt out rather than letting expensive and high-priced fund managers clip the ticket on your money.
One moment, please.
And it's about creating a country and a system where individual enterprise is rewarded and people can get ahead, because that's the way we actually deal properly with the sort of problems that have been expressed. And inflation is high, Minister, not just because of international pressures, it's because of the spending that's continued post-pandemic. It's because the RBA should have moved some months ago to deal with interest rates, and sadly, and I've been through this, I'm 59 this year, and I saw what happened when the RBA didn't move many years ago, 30 years ago, didn't move quickly enough, and it made it harder and tougher for Australians eventually with the recession we'd had to have, and I don't want that for a minute. What I want is I want for you to have Australia out there in front of you as a land of opportunity where you can get the rewards for your labour, and that's what the Liberal Democrats are all about.
Can I jump in?
Please.
And I think it's just fantastic, Jade, that you've really kicked tonight's discussion off, and fabulous to be here at this iconic cultural institution, the powerhouse of Brisbane, one of many, can I say. But young people are going to be the future, taking us forward. And the issues you're talking about are not abstract. And I think sometimes, particularly when we're in campaign mode, and I'm the non-politician here on the panel, so it's easy for me to talk a little bit about this, but the issues you're talking about are the issues people are talking about around the dinner table.
Too right.
And they are hard. And not only is it hard to navigate the rental assistance landscape, it's hard to just find the form you have to fill out. It's hard to talk to a person to actually understand how that fits with other social welfare provisions, with your education. And you don't actually have all that many hours in the day when you're also working and you're studying. And I think we need greater recognition, particularly in this campaign. There are a few weeks left to have more young people talking about the real issues they are facing, because you are the ones who are going to be taking forward the challenges, addressing the challenges that we'll be here talking about tonight, but we're going to be looking to you. We need to invest in you. So I would just say there's an opportunity for all the politicians here to really take the concerns you've put on the table very seriously over the next couple of weeks and give you some solutions.
And that was the Q&A session which happened at the Powerhouse last night. And me and Usha, both of us were there, present to witness the whole lot. And it was quite interesting, as you had just seen there. So, we will keep an eye on how it develops. Maybe we'll try and get hold of the full footage and see if we can run that whole lot, especially because it was in Brisbane and it had a big focus on Brisbane. It talked about the floods and everything like that. Well, right now, let's get on the campaign trail. And cost of living is, of course, dominating this campaign.
It will sting when interest rates start to go up. We're simply pointing out that if the Prime Minister wants to take credit for things that go well in the economy, he needs to take responsibility for the fact that Australians are getting absolutely slaughtered by this triple whammy.
Laura, what does he mean by the triple whammy? And Labor's hoping to be the government in a few weeks, so what would they do about it?
The triple whammy that Labor's talking about, Lee, is skyrocketing inflation and as a result rising interest rates and falling real wages, as we discussed last night. I think it's interesting that they're obviously going in for the kill a bit, making sure that people associate this with the coalition, even though the government, of course, has other answers to this. And it's not over-promising in what it will do about it. As he says in that grab, higher interest rates are going to sting. Now, a really big part of Labor's answer here is childcare. And essentially they're arguing that for every dollar put in by government, you get a $2 economic return, because you don't just get a cost of living relief factor for parents, but you get the fact that parents can go back into the workforce and boost household income. So that's a really important sort of part of the Labor proposal to deal with this rising cost of living. They're saying that they can't fix it on day one, but they're talking about policies like training policies, and most importantly, I think the significant difference they're taking on the wage case at the Fair Work Commission in both the aged care sectors and on the minimum wage.
Laura, what's been the government's response?
Well, the government's response is that we're doing better than the rest of the world, which I don't think is of great comfort to people. They're saying that Australia's annual inflation rate might be 5.1%, but New Zealand and Canada, it's almost 7%, and it's 8.5% in the US. So their message is still, look, things might be bad, but that's essentially the really good reason not to risk things on Labor. But once again, one of their problems is that they've had that measure in the budget, which was the $250 payments, which were all starting to be paid today, and the petrol tax cut. But I suppose what's happened with this inflation rate rise and the implication of higher interest rates, it's only really reinforced how transitory those bits of tax relief will be compared to a long run of much higher interest rates.
Laura Tingle, thank you.
That is the scenario. And right now, getting back onto this campaign trail, the idea today is to look at those marginal seats. Looking at the marginal seats, as we know, one such seat is Lily, and yesterday Annika Wells from the Labour, who is the incumbent, and who won that by a very little margin, but she's holding on to that seat, had an opportunity to be on Q&A while the other candidates didn't. Well, these are the things, how they go. But the marginal seats are the ones which are targeted because, you have to really work hard, play on the things, and it could come your way because it's got a small margin of whoever's holding it now is holding it with a small margin. So that's what you need to overcome. One such seat is the seat of Boothby. Let's see what's happening there.
In the Adelaide foothills, these volunteers are collecting seeds they say are crucial for revegetation and the future of the planet.
If you rattle it like this, you can hear that rattle with the seed inside.
This area they're trying to protect is in Boothby, South Australia's most marginal seat. In this relatively affluent electorate, climate change is a red-hot issue.
We have less than 10% of native bushland left in the Adelaide Hills. As a nation, we really need to step up, we need to invest more, and we need to protect more natural areas.
I'm a resident of Boothby and I have been all my life. Climate change is my number one decision-making factor when I'm considering where to place my vote.
Oh, excellent. Can I offer you a shopping bag? Oh, lovely. There you go.
Yeah. Liberal candidate and health consultant Rachel Swift is directing her pitch at voters like Sarah.
Climate change is regularly raised with me. I'm pleased that we've already made a commitment to net zero by 2050.
Yeah. Another lady was talking to me about climate change.
Labor's Louise Miller-Frost is also promising climate change action.
Labor has a 2030 target. It's a target that's been independently modelled. It has policies behind it that show we will get there.
Boothby is commonly described as a bush, burbs and beach electorate, with a razor-thin margin of 1.4% and no incumbent. Some election observers believe the Liberals face a real risk of losing the seat they've held since 1949.
The government currently holds a majority of one seat, so they really can't afford to lose any seats anywhere in the country. So a seat like Boothby is of critical importance to the government if it's to survive.
Good luck, everyone. Eyes down. And your first number is 6 and 0, number 60.
With such a tight margin, the Liberal candidate has to balance the Coalition's climate change pitch with bread and butter issues such as the cost of living.
I don't go out much because it's too expensive. It's actually cheaper to stay home.
I never ever thought that I'd carry on about pensioners, but now that I'm one myself, it becomes quite relevant, you know, going shopping and with the food prices. Petrol, of course, is horrendous.
Beyond the fuel tax relief, what is the Coalition doing to ease the cost of living?
Well, there's lots of elements to that. So some of them come around housing and making sure that there's opportunities for people to purchase a house. It's also about making sure that people have the opportunity to get into good jobs and plan for their future.
As a former CEO of welfare agency St Vincent de Paul, Labor's Louise Miller-Frost says she understands how much people are struggling.
There's a lot of pain out in the community. There's a lot of hope, but there is a lot of pain.
How will Labor reduce the cost of living for Boothby voters?
Certainly lowering the cost of power prices through our renewable energy strategy. And the cost of living issue is both a wage and a cost issue. So raising the wages will actually also help.
The tight race means preferences will be crucial.
I think the expectation would be that the Labor and Liberal Party will finish first and second on preferences. Most of the Greens' preferences at the last election flowed to Labor, and I think there's every expectation that that would happen again.
Hi there, my name's Jeremy and I'm the Greens candidate for Boothby. If we in Boothby elect a Liberal representative, we know that they'll be answerable to Barnaby Joyce and Scott Morrison, and we know how those two feel about action on climate change.
Has the Coalition got the policy settings on climate correct, or can more be done?
I think there's always opportunity to do more, and I think anyone who seeks to represent their community wants to have a voice on a number of issues. I come from a science background. I'm evidence-based in how I make my decisions, and I'm very good at using that evidence to convince others that we need to make certain decisions.
Independent candidate Joe Dyer is also pitching environmental advocacy and is backed by $20,000 from Simon Holmes à Court's Climate 200 group.
We want to see a moratorium on any new gas and coal extraction. We want to see an immediate abolition of the subsidies for the fossil fuel industry.
Joe Dyer made national headlines as the friend and advocate of the woman known as Kate, who took her own life in 2020, months after accusing former Attorney General Christian Porter of raping her when they were both teens back in the late 1980s. He's consistently denied the accusation.
Nothing in the allegations that have been printed ever happened.
We know Joe Dyer ran for the Labor Party as a pre-selection candidate in Adelaide, has been very vocal on her Labor views or anti-Liberal views online.
I haven't been a member of the Labor Party since my late 20s. I am critical of the government and I'm critical of their policy legacy, and I'm critical of their policy agenda, but I'm also critical of the Labor Party.
Polls indicate Labor could have the upper hand in Boothby, but the Liberals have a track record of fighting off defeat.
I do think there is a mood for change. Whether that's sufficient remains to be seen.
I know if they offer me their vote that I...
As I mentioned, it will be interesting to see all those marginal seats and the fight is there for them. So the key issues that have been always identified is number one, climate change. Number two, the wage increases. Number three, the cost of living. Number four, the interest rate rise. So, come Tuesday, we'll find out what's going to happen. So these are some of the things that are the key issues. And of course, here in Queensland, the floods also played a major role in the discussion that happened yesterday at the Q&A session. Well, right now, there's so much that we can talk about, but we really need to get moving on with the news. So let's take a look at what's happening in Ukraine and what is the call by UN.
This war must end, and peace must be established in line with the Charter of the United Nations and international law. Many leaders have made many good efforts to stop the fighting, but these efforts so far have not succeeded. And I'm here to say to you, Mr. President, and to the people of Ukraine, we will not give up. As we keep pushing for a full-scale ceasefire, we will also keep striving for immediate practical steps to save lives and reduce human suffering. Effective humanitarian corridors, local cessations of hostilities, safe passage for civilian and supply routes. Today, the people of Mariupol are in desperate need for just such an approach. Mariupol is a crisis within a crisis. Thousands of civilians need life-saving assistance. Many are elderly, in need of medical care, or have limited mobility. They need an escape route out of the apocalypse. During my visit to Moscow, President Putin agreed in principle to the involvement of the United Nations and the International Committee for the Red Cross in the evacuation of civilians from the Azovstal plant in Mariupol. Today, President Zelensky and I had the opportunity to address this issue. And as we speak, there are intense discussions to move forward on this proposal to make it a reality.
And to make that a reality is a big challenge as well. I mean, look, in hindsight, everyone would like that, but whether or not that is going to happen and when is it going to happen is another big question as well, because the time is just running out. Not even as far away as Ukraine and Russia, but it is also dominating the space and the discussion points right here, because anything that happens in the world today not only affects that region, of course it does affect that more so than other regions, but it always has a global effect. Now, in all our election campaign, local campaigns here, that is a major topic and it's a major issue as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you glimpses of the changing India. In our first story, in response to condemnation by Western countries on its stand on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, India has said that it no longer needs approval from others. Taking a tough stand on condemnation from Western nations on its refusal to condemn Russia's aggression against Ukraine, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on April 27th said that India no longer needs approval from other nations and it should engage others on its own terms. At the Raisina Dialogue in New Delhi, organized by the Ministry of External Affairs, Jaishankar said, quote, "We have to be confident about who we are. I think it is better to engage the world on the basis of who we are." End quote. The Indian minister also sought to respond to US Secretary of State Antony Blinken's recent comment that President Joe Biden's administration was monitoring human rights abuses in India. Jaishankar said, quote, "This idea that others define us, somehow we need to get the approval of other quarters. I think that it is an era we need to put behind us." End quote. The US Commission for International Religious Freedom in its latest report on April 25th reiterated its 2020 and 2021 recommendations asking the Biden administration to designate India as a country of particular concern in view of the drastic downward turn in religious freedom in the country. During the panel discussion at the dialogue, Jaishankar said, quote, "There was a time in this part of the world that we were pretty much the only democracy. If democracy is global today, we see it as global today. I think in some measure that credit is due to India." End quote. emphasizing the importance of India in the current global scenario and India-Germany relations. German Minister Dr. Tobias Lindner said that no major global problem can be solved without India.
Minister of State at the German Federal Foreign Office, Dr. Tobias Lindner, has said that no major global problem can be solved without India, and India is an important partner of Germany. Lindner said that India and Germany will boost their cooperation in technology, education, security and climate change. The German minister said, quote, "We want to have cooperation in technology, education, security and climate change with India. No major problem can be solved without India. India is such an important partner. Looking forward to deepening Germany-India relations," end quote. The remarks of the German leader come days ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Germany. Apart from Germany, the Prime Minister will also visit Denmark and France during his first foreign visit this year from May 2nd to 4th.
India has offered an additional $500 million to Sri Lanka to help it import fuel as the Sri Lankan government discusses a bailout package with the IMF.
As the financial crisis deepens in Sri Lanka, India continues to offer to bail out its neighbor. India has offered an additional $500 million to help Sri Lanka, while that country is in an advanced stage of discussion with the International Monetary Fund for a bailout package. Sri Lanka, which is grappling with one of the worst ever foreign exchange crises and a shortage of essential commodities, was extremely disappointed when China declined on flimsy grounds to come forward to support the country. The fresh $500 million additional support by India to Colombo is over and above the $1.5 billion credit line offered by India earlier. The economic situation in Sri Lanka is terrible and it has requested both India and China for support. India responded with an additional $500 million for the time being against Colombo's request for $1 billion, but China cited difficulties in supporting the country. Sri Lanka had asked for $1 billion in loan and $1.5 billion in buyer's credit from China, and the so-called humanitarian assistance is of no avail for a country that is facing difficulties in importing even essential commodities. Sri Lanka needs at least $4 billion to meet its immediate debt service and import requirements. Ali Sabri, the new finance minister of Sri Lanka, is presently holding talks with international institutions including the IMF, the World Bank, China and Japan. He expressed hope that if the efforts are successful and an investment of $2 billion comes to the central bank, it will help stop the depreciation of SLR and stabilize it.
Global IT companies are looking to move their IT services out of Russia to India and Turkey as Russia continues its aggression against Ukraine.
French IT consulting group Atos on April 27th confirmed moving services delivered from Russia to other countries including India and Turkey. Atos condemned the war in Ukraine. Atos revealed that on April 5th the group confirmed the managed exit of its Russia-based operations. Atos delivers critical digital services to some of its global clients out of Russia. The company said in a statement that the feasibility of exiting Russia has required significant planning in terms of implications for business operations and for Atos employees based there. Atos is focused on managing the impact on its employees as part of an orderly exit. In support of its global clients, the group is moving services currently delivered from Russia to other countries, including India and Turkey. In Q1 2022, Atos consolidated revenue was £2,747 million, up plus 2.1% on a reported basis and down minus 0.6% at constant currency. Rodolphe Balmer, Chief Executive Officer of Atos, declared revenue in Q1 was in line with our expectations and fully consistent with the quarterly sequence embedded in our 2022 guidance. Albeit negative revenue growth at constant currency improved sequentially, driven by an improvement in our tech foundations business, while digital and cyber security remained well into positive territory.
Air India is set to buy a stake in AirAsia India from Malaysia's AirAsia. This is part of Tata Sons' effort to bring its aviation business under one roof. Tata Sons already owns an 83% stake in AirAsia India.
In its first merger and acquisition under new owner Tata Sons, national carrier Air India has proposed to buy low-cost carrier AirAsia India according to an application with the Competition Commission of India. The move will see Malaysia's AirAsia exiting the airline venture 9 years after it entered India with high hopes. AirAsia owns 16.33% of the India unit, and according to the shareholders' agreement between the company and Tata Sons, the latter can acquire the former's stake directly or through an affiliate. Since Air India is now an affiliate of Tata's, the purchase of AirAsia's stake has been routed through it. Air India will buy AirAsia's 16.3% in the airline venture for Rs 139 crore. The remaining stake of 83.7% in AirAsia India is held by Tata Sons. This too will be purchased by Air India. Tata Sons acquired Air India through its 100% arm Teles in an Rs 18,000 crore equity and debt deal on January 27th this year. The CCI application is the first step by Tata Sons to integrate its aviation business, which also includes low-cost carrier Air India Express. The proposed acquisition of AirAsia India by Air India will not lead to any change in the competitive landscape or cause any appreciable adverse effects on competition in India. Tata Sons airline brands including Air India, AirAsia India and Vistara have a domestic market share of 25%, while Indigo remains the market leader with a share of almost 54%. Air India Express is primarily an international budget carrier connecting South India to the Gulf and Southeast Asia. Through AirAsia, India started flying in 2014, a year before Vistara started operations. It still does not have the right to fly abroad. On the other hand, Vistara flies to several foreign locations such as the UK, Europe, Gulf and Southeast Asia. With AirAsia set to exit AirAsia India, Tata Sons will have to bring that business under one brand.
Runway 34, directed by Bollywood actor Ajay Devgan, is set to release in theatres on April 29th. The makers of this edge-of-the-seat thriller starring Amitabh Bachchan and Ajay Devgan himself held a special screening for celebrities recently.
Superstars Amitabh Bachchan and Ajay Devgan.
So that's about all in this segment. As we know, the entertainment segment sometimes has some issues with them. So we will leave it at that. Well, right now, let's take a look at some of the functions and events taking place right here in Brisbane. As we know, this is going to be a big weekend, a mega weekend as they call. So, you know, first of all, we have the GoPio Queensland's High Tea, which is tomorrow at the Brisbane City Hall, and I've been told that it's a sold-out event. So well done, team, on that, and we will be looking forward to meeting as many of you who are coming to the GoPio Queensland's Women High Tea. And the High Tea is for celebrating women, and not only that, also looking at the darker part of their lives, you know, things that really concern people, such as domestic violence, cohesive control, discrimination, etc. as well. White Ribbon will be present there as well. And of course, Caroline Robinson from Beyond DV will be there as one of the speakers as well. And Alka Kothari will be there as well. So it was going to be a wonderful forum. Looking forward to seeing you all there tomorrow. And tonight is the Cultural Diversity Forum, which is been run in Red Banks Plain, and it is once again another good program. I'm one of the panelists there as well. So it's preserving Mother Nature and the cultural diversity that will be discussed. So there's quite a few people on that board. On the discussion panel. Naida Hernandez is organizing that and supported by Shane Newman, MP of Blair. So that is happening tonight. And of course, tomorrow we have Varnam Cultural program happening at Springfield. So, that's going to be all day. And they have the citizenship ceremony happening and other things as well. And tomorrow is also that music program by Chandan Das. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio and the Chantex Multimedia live stream for this Friday, the 29th of April. And hey, it's been wonderful having your company. And don't forget, there's so much that's happening out there. Look, the COVID restrictions rules ease as well over this weekend. But I said you should always take precaution, always take care when you're going out. And last night at the powerhouse, there was over 400 people in attendance into that Q&A. And I must say, for that many people, it was very well organized, getting everyone in, getting past the security checkpoints, getting past the registration, getting your seats, getting your seat allocation, sitting in, getting ready for the show, and the show which goes on live as well. So it was wonderful to see all that happening right in front of your eyes, seeing the action. And of course, to me, looking at that production, comparing that to my little production here as well, we do quite a lot from here as well. So, without all that kind of resources behind you and that many number of people helping and assisting, all you do is sit down and present. So we have to do the whole lot ourselves. But anyway, it was very, very nice to be there and see that. And so this weekend is going to be a very, very big weekend. Of course, today I'll be on that panel at the Cultural Diversity Forum. Naida Hernandez is organizing that. And I'll be moderating the session at the Women's High Tea, or that panel discussion between the, regarding from advocacy to action. So, looking at what we have been saying, and from there, where should we be leading to? So, ladies and gentlemen, with all that, I need to say goodbye until tomorrow. It's been wonderful having your company.